You're either on the bus or you're off the bus.
Welcome aboard episode 45 of Ridin The Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Central Iowa Pool and Spa is headed your way. Ben Gisleson, there's no one to my right, there's no one to my left. For the first time in Ridin The Bus history, I am flying solo. Don't worry, Joey Goldstein will be back, but we thought it'd been a few weeks since we finished our last off-season episode. Initially, the plan was to have both Joey and I here today to walk through training camp. We're in the midst of training camp right now. We wanted just to talk a little bit more about the roster. As I record this today, we are one preseason game in. Tonight, the Wild will be headed out to Coralville, the home of the Iowa Heartlanders, to play at Extreme Arena against the Rockford Ice Hogs after a 4-3 nail-biting loss yesterday in Rockford. This podcast will end up coming out after the second preseason game is complete. And so Joey and I thought, well, let's grab something quick. This will not be a long episode. Even if Joey was going to be here, this would not have been a long episode. But we wanted to touch base. We know people are wondering, what does the roster look like? What do some of the players look like? Ben, what have you seen? Joey, what have you seen? You're going to have to put up with just my thoughts because we don't have Joey here today. He bailed last second. As much as I want to take this opportunity without Joey here to defend himself, to absolutely light him up like a Christmas tree, I'm a better guy than that. I'm a better podcast host than that. I'm a better friend than that. So I'm going to reserve my comments for when he returns, and then we can really lay into him about him leaving me high and dry for this episode here today. But it's good to be back. It's a busy, busy week, so I understand that Joy wasn't able to make it for this, but we wanted to at least pull our head up out of the ground, take a gasp of air, and connect with our fans to talk about what has been seen, what has come about this week. Obviously, the Iowa Wild roster that was announced early in this past week didn't really feature a lot of the big names that we thought we'd see. Those names have since made their way down over the course of the week. So we'll get into more of what that roster looks like. We also want to talk, obviously, about opening night, which is coming up on October 12th. Home opening weekend, October 12th and 13th. But before we get started on all of that, before we dive into it, want to make sure we give credit where credit is due to our sponsors, Central Iowa Pool and Spa, and I will do my best Joey Goldstein impression to go through our Central Iowa Pool and Spa read to open our show today. First and foremost, October 10th through the 13th, great sale going on at Central Iowa Pool and Spa. It's going to get cold. You're going to want to have something to do in the wintertime. Grew up with a great family friend up in Minnesota who had a hot tub in the backyard. There was nothing better getting in the hot tub, flying out, diving into the snow. You're frozen, you're shivering, you run back to that hot tub. And if you're looking for something to fill out that backyard patio, no better time to do that right now than to head out October 10th through the 13th to Central Iowa Pool and Spa. That's 5360 Northeast 14th Street in Des Moines. They have a wonderful sale that's going on. Hot tubs, that'll be for a better price than you can find them at any given point. And it's a great opportunity to come out and check out Central Iowa Pool and Spa and get your hands on some great winter fun and a great way to relax in the midst of the what can be frigid Des Moines winter. So again, October 10th through the 13th. Now, you can upgrade your backyard entertainment with a luxurious Sundance Spa from Central Iowa Pool and Spa. Our hot tubs offer the ultimate in relaxation and hydrotherapy, perfect for unwinding after a long day or socializing with friends. Enjoy features like powerful jets, soothing waterfalls, sciatic jets, and hip jets. Let us help you choose the perfect spa to enhance your outdoor living space. Give Central Iowa Pool and Spa a call at 515-263-6900 or stop in at 5360 Northeast 14th Street in Des Moines. Okay, let's start with opening weekend. Great reasons to come to Wells Fargo Arena, aside from the fact that the water cooler talk about this team right now is might be a pretty good club this year, but we'll get there. 6 p.m., October 12th, magnet schedule giveaway, opening night presented by Quickstar. Hickman Door Services and KXNO are providing the magnet schedule giveaway. Also, 2-for-1 Confluence beers until puck drop that night. It's a great reason without even considering any of the other reasons to come out to the game. I know the Confluence Beer 2-for-1 night is a big fan favorite. So that's October 12th. And then October 13th, it's Kids Kickoff presented by Capital Orthopedics. Shoe Charms giveaway presented by Capital Orthopedics to the first 1,500 kids 12 and under. Also, a poster schedule giveaway that night as well, presented by Capital Orthopedics and KXNO. And there's a post-game skate after the game as well. That's a 3 p.m. puck drop. So nice little afternoon game to kick off home opening weekend. Both days will feature the Manitoba Moose. So if we have any Jets fans out there, looking at you, Ken Miller on KXNO, who I know does enjoy the Jets from his native homeland of Winnipeg. That's the farm club of the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose. Should be a great weekend, and it will be here before we know it. We're already, as I record this, just over a week away. So that is what you can experience, and what you can watch coming up that following weekend is this. I mentioned the water cooler talk, and what I mean by that is this is a Wild team that last year, as every team does, you run into injury, your parent club runs into injury, and when that happens, it's double trouble, because if Minnesota loses 2 players, Iowa's losing 2 players. If Minnesota loses 2 players and Iowa loses 2 players, it's a 4-player swing right there that you're having to deal with. It will happen again this year. It's not a question of if it will happen. It's a question of when it will happen. What has been made very clear is the Iowa Wild, really spearheaded by the Minnesota Wild and Bill Guerin all the way down, have really addressed the fact that last year they were not able to weather that storm. At least in the American League, they were not. You look at some of the players that are going to be available to the Minnesota Wild and also the Iowa Wild, and there are options. There are lots of options. It is a deep team. It is a far older team, and it even feels older this year. That's no slight to the veterans of last season. Everyone knows what I thought about Stephen Fogarty. He will be sorely missed. But meeting some of these new, older veteran players, guys like Travis Boyd, who, by the way, Travis Boyd is not long removed from some fabulous National Hockey League seasons. This is a guy with almost 300 National League games played. He's coming off of a season where he missed 66 games due to injury, only played 16 games last year. So he could very well be a swing guy, someone that Minnesota sees a lot of. We maybe don't see as much of, depending on what Minnesota needs at a given time. But if he's in the American Hockey League, Travis Boyd's going to score, and that's just what he's going to do. And you look at him, you look at Brendan Gaunce, who's another player that will likely be a 1, 2, 3 in that finalists of who's the swing player for this season. There's usually 1 or 2 guys that are spending a lot of time traveling up and down I-35, but he's another player that you look at his numbers last year, 39 points with Cleveland, and he was the captain of that team, a Cleveland club that went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final, and in many respects probably should have found a way to beat the Hershey Bears. They were very much in that series. They came all the way back after being down, I believe it was 3-1 at one point. They had all the momentum. Obviously, a Hershey team that at times last year was unbeatable. Cleveland couldn't finish the job, falling in Game 7. But they had as good of a chance as anybody to beat Hershey. And Brendan Gaunce was a huge part of that with those 39 points that he delivered, and 19 of those were goals. And Gaunce, Boyd, Graham Clark, could we see him at some point? He's injured right now up in Minnesota. But when he gets healthy, the rules go. As a player gets hurt in the National Hockey League, in order to send them down, and I don't know that Clark's coming down at this point, but he's someone that we could see. You cannot see that player until they're cleared by a National Hockey League staff. So when he gets cleared from injury, maybe they keep him. Maybe they don't. Maybe we get to see Graham Clark, who, if we were full strength today, Joey Goldstein would take over this part, because he saw him at the All-Star game last season and said he was the best player on the ice, period, when he was playing for Utica. Clark with 25 goals last year, 49 points. Now, this is a talented player who was acquired via the Adam Beckman trade, and someone that if Iowa sees him, he will score. We're not even done yet. Devin Shore, who's played 443 National Hockey League games, he's already here in Iowa. You're looking at Caden Bank here stepping up into probably a more elevated role this year. Sammy Walker is still here after a year where he had still the team lead in scoring. Sammy Walker returns after a 45-point season. Yes, he had less goals than he did his first year, but he's going to be hungry. Sammy Walker wants to prove he belongs in the National Hockey League, and the competition is pretty stiff. So we've already gone through the top two lines, and there's still more players even below that you should be excited about. And who knows what the lineup might actually look like. Ben Jones is currently still with the Minnesota Wild. He's played really well, but he's someone that we could still see too. And he's been north of 50 points for the last 3 seasons in the American Hockey League. 43 points last year, but he's been north of 50 points at least once or twice in the last 3 years. A player that can deliver for you, that can contribute. So all of this to say, as we look at the options that Minnesota will have, that's what I think is really illustrated by this group. Hunter Haight is going to try to prove what he can bring to his professional acumen. His first-year pro. I'll have to give him some time. Yes, he's a second-round pick, but it takes a while to jump into the American League level. You've still got Adam Raska around who played NHL games last year. And then even below that, Matt Sopp had 2 goals in his opening preseason game yesterday out in Rockford. So you have these players that not only when you see a Boyd go up or you see a Gauntz go up or Clark or Shore or Walker or Bankier or you name it, all of a sudden what's coming up under them are players that can help you, that can deliver, that can maybe do a little bit more than play that checking role if you need them to. And we haven't even talked about Mikey Milne yet, who's injured, but should be making his way down at some point. Luke Toporowski got injured during training camp as well. He's going to be a part of this fold. He's trying to prove he could get an NHL game too. And then I've totally neglected to talk about Reese Johnson, who was a Chicago Blackhawk all year last year, 42 games with the Hawks. These are bona fide NHL players that Iowa just didn't have those types of options last year. They do now. It's going to help Minnesota, but even more importantly, it's going to help Iowa. Looking at the blue line, there may not be as much rotation there. You don't maybe see as many guys that are right on that cusp of being NHLers yet. Cam Crotty, Joe Ciccone, huge additions for Iowa because they're bona fide, strong AHL defensemen. Iowa needed more of that last year. They didn't get it. They have it now. And Ryan O'Rourke's another year older. Jack Peart will come in. What can he bring from a puck-moving defenseman standpoint? Spacek, Lambos, Kyle Masters. What will their second year's pro look like? We all saw what David Spacek did at the end of the year last year. Was fantastic down the stretch for Iowa. Went to the World Championships with Czechia, brought home a gold medal. His game hasn't dropped at all. They've been extremely pleased with the progression that he's made, and he's come into camp ready to play. I was talking about it. If you tuned into the broadcast on Wednesday morning in Rockford, brought it up with Brad Bombardier, Director of Player Development for the Minnesota Wild. When I saw Spacek lay out and block a shot on the penalty kill, that's game 1 of the preseason. You hope he doesn't get hurt. I don't think he did. But the fact that you've got a player who's got a guaranteed roster spot. David Spacek's making the Iowa Wild this season, blocking a shot in a preseason game. That's what Brett McLean and his staff are asking for. They want you to buy in from the opening day, and it seems like that's happening. The final side of this piece, and this is the one that I don't want to call it a question mark, but let's just rewind to the offseason. Goaltending-wise for the Iowa Wild, as I was preparing my charts, my broadcasting charts, the 2 goalies I had on those charts were Jesper Wallstedt and Troy Grosenick. Jesper, maybe I was being hopeful for the team and probably a little pessimistic for him, but thrilled that he's more than likely going to be starting in Minnesota. That's what it feels like right now. Thrilled for him, bummed for the Iowa Wild. This is the double-edged sword of working in this league. You're thrilled for the player, you're sad for the team when a great player moves on. Just because Jesper starts there doesn't mean he stays there. Again, part of me really hopes he does. The part that wants to see the Iowa Wild be a potential Calder Cup contender with a goalie like that wants him to be here. So it's this weird tug of war that you have internally. But for now, I think we're putting Jesper out of the conversation. Fans shouldn't, because you could see him again. But right now, I think it's best that this team is, and what they're doing in the Wild locker room right now here in Des Moines is preparing for life without him. The goal was obviously to have a wonderful veteran goaltender to complement Jesper or to complement one of two very, very decorated goaltenders that are coming in as rookies, whether it be Samuel Halavai or Kyle McClellan. Now, all of a sudden, as hockey tends to do, it throws you a cruel curveball. Troy Grosenick, surgery this past fall after he was injured this summer. He's out for the season. So what do? Well, you go out and you sign the best player available. And let me tell you, as this injury became apparent and our goaltender coach, Richard Bachman, had to figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to fill this void? He told me that when this injury when it came to fruition, when it came about, and I was told that the Wild staff learned about this injury maybe a few weeks ago, all of a sudden, you've got to find a goaltender, and could not have picked a worse time to try to find a goaltender, because when you look at the scheme, the scope of hockey right now, teams and training camp numbers are large. And when this injury happened a few weeks ago, teams hadn't even really taken many injuries yet. So goalies are on PTO contracts, goalies are on tryout contracts, goalies have signed. If this injury happens a month or two into the season, some of those older goalies may fizzle out. They might not be able to keep up at a certain play or a certain team. They get let go from their PTO contracts. All of a sudden, these guys are available. The injury timing could not have been worse, I was told. But the Wild were able to find Dylan Ferguson, who is someone that has not only AHL experience, but NHL experience. It's minor. He hasn't done it a lot, but Ferguson's played NHL games. He's played for Vegas back in the 2017-18 season. He backed up in Vegas a little bit during the 21-22 season, 2 games in Ottawa during the 22-23 season. He was with Dynamo Minsk last year in the KHL. Good numbers, a 2.51 goals against and a 904 save percentage in 23 games. He's played at a high level. He's still in shape, because one thing all of a sudden you might start to think about is if you have to pull off the board to grab a random older goalie, which is the goal, you have 2 rookies to pick from. You need an older guy. Ferguson not as old as Grosenick is, 26 compared to 35. But nonetheless, you've got a guy that's played in pro hockey for coming up on 7-8 seasons, and someone that's hungry, someone that wants to prove he can still play in the American League. Usually when guys go over across to Europe, that's typically the decision. All right, I've ran my gamut in the North American side. I'm going to go play at a high level in Europe and probably make a good amount of money. All of a sudden, Ferguson gets this opportunity. He gets to come back, and he played last year, because there was a situation that could have played out where Iowa had to go deep off the board and find somebody that maybe didn't play last year, didn't play very much last year, was a very, very minor complementary backup to a heavy load starter, where you're able to get Ferguson, who played 23 games. So it's as good as Iowa, I think, could have done. And you still have a guy, too, that isn't sold. 26 is not 35. And Ferguson, have not gotten to see him yet, still working out some travel details for him, but excited to see him next week, because as of right now, what it looks like for the Iowa Wild, they'll be riding with Dylan Ferguson and either Samuel Halavai or Kyle McClellan. Although Will Rousseau, for those of you that tuned in to Wednesday's game, he had a whale of a game. So he might be trying to enter his name into the conversation of who is the Iowa Wild's best rookie goaltending option. So we'll have to wait and see what comes of that. But all things considered, looking at the group, yes, goaltending is extremely important. Who knows what Halavai or McClellan could bring? They're unproven. Rookie goaltenders can sometimes show up and do less than you expected them to do. They can also sometimes show up and do far more than you expected them to do. We'll hope for the latter on both McClellan and Halavai, and that they'll be able to bring more to the table than maybe Richard Bachman and Brett McLean thought they could. And the same goes for Ferguson. What can he do? What can he bring to the organization? I haven't seen much of him. I can't speak much of him. I've spoken with him a little bit. Seems like a wonderful guy. But again, as a whole, as this group looks right now, the talk around the water cooler, I've received notes from other people in the American League after rosters started to come out saying, you guys are looking like you got a pretty good club. That's a big compliment. That's not something that happens very often. A lot can change. If we rewind back to this time back in the fall of 2023, Joey Goldstein and I were sitting in these same chairs. Well, he's not there. There's my one shot at Joey today. But we were sitting in these chairs talking about the high octane offense of the Iowa Wild. They wound up being the lowest scoring team in the American Hockey League last year. Talking about a freezing cold take. That one is ice cold. But this group seems a little more foolproof to me, a little more hardened, a little more injury prepared, and ready to really take and try to climb carefully and comfortably the peaks and the valleys of an American Hockey League season. That's what it comes down to. It's who can manage those injuries, who can manage the call-ups, and who's got the depth to handle it. This Iowa team seems like they are ready for that. And the fact that Minnesota couldn't go out with the final year of that cap crunch due to the buyouts of Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, still in effect one more year. The fact that Minnesota couldn't go out and take a big swing at a free agent, what they had to do was go out and sign two-way deals. Crotty, Ciccone, Boyd, Jones, Gaunce, Shore. These are the names that they went out and got. Reese Johnson. It wasn't go out and get X player and Y player to fill Minnesota's cupboard. It was to fill Iowa's. And that's going to benefit the Wild here in Des Moines. It really is. So there's a lot to be excited about. I'm very excited for the season. Brett McLean and his staff have been overjoyed at the group in the opening 4 days of camp now. And we'll look forward to opening weekend. And the one thing, too, talking with Brett, talking with his staff, is there isn't that unfamiliarity that they had last year. Brett was brand new to the players. A lot of the players are brand new to the organization. Brett's figuring out what are my schemes? How do I operate to the players? How do I operate with my staff? There's none of that learning curve anymore. Hit the ground running, jump in right away, get to your culture, get to your schemes, get to the way you want this Wild team to play day one. And that's exactly what has happened so far. So I'm excited, and you should be too. This is a team that, at least from my perch, and I'll stand up and say this, I think they're a playoff team this year. I really do. Looking around the Central Division, there are some other very good teams in the division, don't get me wrong. But looking at the teams on paper, I really like where Iowa's at, and I like where they're headed, and I like the group they have in this room. The new guys that I've gotten to meet and spend time around, they operate really professionally. It's a job, and they understand that. They're there early. They know what they're here to do. They know what they're here to accomplish. I early today saw Travis Boyd. First day with the full group. He got in yesterday. A lot of the team was obviously in Rockford playing in that preseason game. He's talking to a young player. He's talking to Jack O'Brien. They may never play a game together this year, but I'm seeing Brendan Gaunce sitting in there. He's talking with another young player in Ryan Sandelin. These guys are infiltrating. They're getting into the locker room. They're demonstrating what they know. They're helping the younger players along. And that's a really important thing at this level. It's going to pay huge dividends for players like Caden Bankier, for players like Hunter Haight, for players like Carson Lambos, David Spacek, those younger players. The blend of what the older group is and what the younger group is this year, I think, is going to mesh really well. And it's not as young as last year. Lambos isn't a rookie. Spacek isn't a rookie. You get those 9 games from Jack Peart that he played at the end of the year. Those are going to pay huge dividends. You're looking at some of the younger players now, and you're thinking there might not be as much pressure put on the younger players that there was last season. To me, that's a good thing. So I'm excited for the year. You should all be excited too. Another thing that you should be excited about coming up in a couple of weeks, October 16th, for any rookie season ticket holders out there, first year season ticket holders, one of our favorite events of the year, one of my favorite events of the year, rookie camp. So if you're a first year season ticket holder and you want to come out and learn more about how this all works, not only how it works down in the locker room where you'll get to hang out with Shaky Kraus, who is just such a great time and so funny to be around, great storyteller too. You can hang out with Shaky. You'll get to learn about sharpening skates. You get to learn about setting up the locker room. You'll get a tour of the locker room. Brett McLean will be here. He's going to run you through what a pregame video session might look like, what to watch for when Carson Lambos is taking a puck out of his own zone. How do you know when David Spacek's playing well? He's going to help you walk through those things and learn more about the game. You'll get to go upstairs and hang out with Emily, our wonderful game ops coordinator. How does this whole show work? How does the video board work? How does the music work? How do the lights work? How do all of the pageantry and showmanship that the Iowa Wild deliver, how does that work on a given night? You'll get to learn about that. And if you want to, you can come hang out with me for a second too. I'll be up in the press box talking about how I prepare for games, how our broadcast works, and you'll get to see what I think is the best view in the American Hockey League, the perch right at center ice from the Tom Curvers Memorial Press Box. I love our press box so dearly. And you'll get to sit up there with me if you so please. And there's more than just that too. It's a fabulous night. Our staff works really hard on it. So again, any first-year season ticket holders, call now because it's coming up soon and spots are running out. 515-564-8700 or go to iowawild.com to learn more about that. Okay, what did I miss? Did I miss anything? Don't forget about the sale, Central Iowa Pool and Spa, October 10th through the 13th. Great sale, great options. Get a hot tub. Our players are raving about the new hot tub, which is not something that we said about our old hot tub, which really needed to be replaced. So thanks to Central Iowa Pool and Spa for doing that. The hip jets that I talked about in the read, I can speak about them. They're outstanding. So thanks to Central Iowa Pool and Spa for sponsoring this show. As always, thanks to Abby Kimball, who will be putting together this edit on the video side. And thank you to Joey Goldstein for making me talk for 20 minutes by myself. Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it. Maybe we'll see you around sometime. And thanks to all of you, our viewers and our listeners, for watching as well. Oh, and Jeremy Core with Executive Podcasting Solutions for making this listenable, however you are tuning in. That's it. Episode 45 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Central Iowa Pool and Spa, has come to a close. Hopefully this helps you learn a little bit more about what we can expect October 12th for the home opener. We'll see you all out there on that night, we hope. I'm Ben Gislason. Thanks for joining us, and 2 honks for the win.